Good morning, I'm Robin Gibson, and this is your Harvard House Money Morsel. Welcome back. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell to receive a notification of when we release a new video. I'm sitting this morning with Willie Pelser, Chief Economist of Harvard House. Willie, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you again.
So, Willie, this week I read in the press that we had a mining conference and we were rated as very low from a mining perspective for investment. Then I see this week also that Sanral cancelled 17 billion rands worth of projects, including for us at KZN, the Ashburton corridor. But then on the other side, last week, JP Landman released a very positive note called Joining the Dots, where he talked about the reforms and what sort of movements were being made in that space. What are you seeing on the ground as an economist, and how can you help me to sort of divide between these two conflicting pieces of information?
Yeah, Robin, thank you for that. Economists always say something on this hand, but on the other hand, so we'll probably work through a concept like that. But we quickly go back to your point about the mining in Durban that happened. If we look at the mining industry specifically, or before we get there, let's just put some things quickly in perspective. In economics, you get your historical data confirmation, which is factual. What happened in the mining industry, agricultural industry, or in the building industry, or whatever. Then you get sort of your current confirmed facts, like yesterday's hike in interest rates. We were anticipating something, it happens, it's right now. So now we need to analyze where that will take us. And then there are your sort of expectation theory in a sense of things that happened or were announced or were planned historically. It's still hanging. So you almost live in hope that they happen. And some of JP's stuff actually focus around that sort of expectation and how it comes to fruition. So we'll go there. So back to the mining industry quickly. If we look at the graph on the mining industry, you will see the phenomenon of the mining industry actually deteriorating in its status as a contributor to the South African economy. And the last few data points actually confirming again that there's struggles in the mining industry. And it's things like reform. It's the labor point. We need reform. There's strikes. The mining, I think, is going into their 9th or their 10th week of strike. So those are the things that actually make the mining industry lagging from a competitive perspective going forward. And then if we look at the manufacturing industry, also we had the release of some statistics. And what's interesting in this graph, if you look at the right-hand side of the graph, I put a sort of a trend line in there. And there's definitely things happening in the manufacturing sector because there's a positive momentum. And that's actually confirmed by some of the things that JP has referred to. So if we look at these statistics, yes, the manufacturing sector is also contributing a small portion to the overall economy. It's still large, but those are the things that we need. And I'll come to the point on the projects. We need the projects to happen. Rebuilding of the road infrastructure, dams, waterworks, you name it, all of those type of things. And in the manufacturing sector, we specifically need South African stuff manufactured and then exported, obviously coming back to the local fiscus. The car industry is an excellent example where for many years they've implemented the process of manufacturing vehicles for the export market, where manufacturers like Ford, Mercedes, Toyota, and so on have South African plants. They're actually investing more in those plants, and those are the manufacturing statistics that help us going forward. There's obviously the COVID period, the strike period, all of those, but it looks like manufacturing is lifting its head. So yes, Sanral has announced cancellation of some contracts. There's indications at this point it's a Sanral process. It's not concerns about backhands or corruption or anything like that. There's something within Sanral that caused them to delay. Hopefully they'll just delay it and announce it in future, because companies like Wilson Bailey, all the other construction companies is now sitting saying, but we've pre-planned this thing. We've got people on schedule to employ people. All of those things are now there's a bit of a concern about that. So let's jump forward now to the JP Longman article. JP is by nature a positive, focused individual, analyzing factual, and that's what he produced in that report. What's interesting about that report, he took the critical areas in South Africa, and I'm not going to repeat everything in that report, it's quite substantial. But he bracketed into concepts like monetary policy, structural reforms, and all of those things. And what's interesting, if we go back a few years, there was a big drive to nationalize the Reserve Bank. It came and went, and the rhetoric started. Eventually, the Reserve Bank themselves, plus the presidency, said, we'll leave this alone. They've got a mandate to protect us against inflation and to help with economic stability. That mandate is in place. It's something of the past. I live in hope that it won't change in the future, but I think that's put to bed. He put a dot on that, connecting the dots, saying, remember that? Now it's factual. We're going forward. Another example, and we've spoken about this in this forum, was it took 10 years to get spectrum auction going. Eventually it happened. And the implication of that happening has substantial benefits for the industry, Internet of Things, and all of those things. So he connects that dot going back to the negativity around it. We can't do things right, Then eventually it happened, and suddenly the boom can happen in that industry. And then other things that he highlights in there is the concept of call it construction, and also the private sector. Remember, a few years ago, government wanted to do everything. Then started to talk a bit about the private sector also needs to come to the party. And a great example that JP actually uses in his article is the new pier being built in the Durban Harbour. And that's private driven. It's a 100 billion project, and that comes from the private sector. Oh. And then there's others which he hasn't even highlighted yet. I'm reading an article just yesterday on the so-called Ferris wheel for Durban. It's coming. It's on schedule. It's a private initiative called the Durban Eye. I've seen some pictures on it or drawings and so on. Those are projects going into that sort of expectation theory going forward. Yeah. On the cards, if it happens, then JP at some point will go and say, okay, let's reconnect or continue on connecting our dots. Okay. So that's how one, from an economic perspective, look at the historical fact, the current fact, and then that hope theory. And when those dots align, which JP is actually doing, one can live in a little bit more of a positive mind about South Africa. I'm not taking away any other concerns that we have, but if we focus on those small little things that can bring a change, that's what we're hoping for.
Awesome. Well, again, it looks like my old adage of be very distrustful of the press. They're just trying to sell papers really holds true. Thank you so much for joining in. If you subscribe and like, you will receive notification of when our next video releases. Thank you, Willie. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.